New CDC data shows a major change in the number of estimated Omicron cases in the U.S. The CDC now estimating Omicron makes up about 59% of U.S. COVID cases. That's a major drop-off from the last estimate of about 73%. Meantime, growing confusion and backlash against the CDC just 24 hours after the agency announced a new policy cutting the quarantine and isolation guidelines by half in some cases. NewsNation correspondent Janelle Fort joins us live outside the CDC in Atlanta tonight. Hey, Janelle.
Hey, Nicole. Well, there are a complex set of new guidelines, new recommendations that loosen the time that you're in quarantine or isolation after coming in contact with COVID-19. And the driving force behind this has to do with the health of America's infrastructure. Tonight, questions raised as the CDC slashes COVID-19 isolation and quarantine times in half. The new guideline shifting stay-at-home orders for those infected or exposed to the virus down to just 5 days. Many Americans now wondering how the new guidelines were crafted and why these scalebacks are happening in the midst of yet another surge in cases. In a statement, CDC Director Dr. Reshad said in part, the CDC's updated recommendations for isolation and quarantine balance what we know about the spread of the virus and the protection provided by vaccination and booster doses. These updates ensure people can safely continue their daily lives. The move being met with mixed reaction from the medical community.
If they're asymptomatic at that point and they have already isolated for the 5 days and they're complying with the strict mask wearing guidelines, I believe it is safe.
On one end, doctors agree the updated recommendations are in line with new scientific evidence showing COVID-19 is the most infectious 2 days before and 3 days after the onset of symptoms.
And then by later on in the course, they are not anymore highly transmissible.
The criticism comes from health experts who worry the changes may confuse some Americans, and others who believe there needs to be a negative COVID-19 test requirement to end the abbreviated quarantine. The CDC says the new guidelines are an effort to keep society functioning while following the science. The business community already warned that the spike in cases could cause staffing shortages from people being forced to stay home, especially those who aren't sick. We've recently seen its impact with the airline industry, where they're blaming Omicron for thousands of flights canceled over the past few days.
People with important jobs in keeping society functioning may not be able to come to work if they're all out for a full 10 days.
And it raises another issue that employers could force people to come back to work who are still sick if they've been home for that 5-day quarantine period. And Nicole, it raises even more questions from people like whether or not the CDC is more focused on the health of the economy than public safety.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.